Hi, this is Janet Swerdlow with the Expansions News Podcast for the second week of June 2017. Now, as you know, I've been gone for a couple of weeks, and there were a couple of stories that were kind of hanging on just before I left. So this first one I wanted to present to you because I think it's interesting, because since I read it before I left and now here I am back, and I have not found a follow-up article, which I think there should be one. Anyway, Senator John McCain of Arizona said that China is behaving like a bully with its militarization of islands in the South China Sea. Now, this was interesting to me because McCain said this, as I said, the end of May, and it was actually, in my opinion, rather inflammatory statements. He said that China was asserting itself globally, best illustrated by militarizing artificial islands in the South China Sea, which is a claim which has repeatedly been rejected by Beijing. He went on to say, I think it is very clear that the Chinese, by filling in these islands, are militarizing them, and that is in violation of international law. To me, these are pretty heavy charges. China claims most of the resource-rich South China Sea, through which about US $5 trillion in shipborne trade passes every year. The U.S. estimates that Beijing has added more than 1,300 hectares of land on 7 features in the South China Sea over the past 3 years, building runways, ports, aircraft hangars, and communications equipment. Now, also here we have as well the 13, keep that in mind. To counter the perceived Chinese aggression, the U.S. has conducted so-called freedom of navigation exercises, the most recent of which was conducted by a U.S. Navy warship near Mischief Reef in the disputed Spratly Islands. Allies such as Australia have so far refused to participate in freedom of navigation exercises in the fear of alienating Beijing. Now listen to this one. McCain goes on to describe Russian President Vladimir Putin as a bigger threat to world security than the Islamic State group. Quote, I think he is the premier and most important threat, more so than ISIS. I think ISIS can do terrible things, but it is the Russians who tried to destroy the very fundamental of democracy, and that is to change the outcome of an American election. I have seen no evidence they succeeded, but they tried, and they are still trying. They just tried to affect the outcome of the French election. So I view Vladimir Putin, who has dismembered the Ukraine, a sovereign nation, who is putting pressure on the Baltics. I view the Russians as the far greatest challenge that we have. Now, I found this article very interesting. Again, it came out at the end of May. I can't find any follow-up articles, and these are rather inflammatory, as I've stated. But Trump, as we've talked about in previous podcasts, is cozying up to China, and yet McCain is kind of saying China's a problem, and Trump is also obviously cozying up with the Russians. So anyway, if you see any more updates on that, let me know, but keep your eye out, because these things are being said for a reason, and sometimes they'll drop something and then come out 2 or 3 months or even years later with something else going on. So, starting to tell you something. Now, I had a couple people send me some articles in via Facebook, which I thought were rather interesting, so I wanted to share that with you. This particular person sent me in something about the supermarket killer at Tunkhannock, Pennsylvania market. Now, apparently, this young man killed 3 fellow employees and himself. He documented his plan and motives in chilling and painstaking detail online. So, according to this, he posted part of a massive, highly disturbing series of uploads that included videos, photographs, audio, and journal entries just before the killings. So, but nobody said that they stopped this, and we've been talking about things that are happening live. Now, this was not live streamed, but yet if he's posting all this online, and they posted as much as they said, why didn't somebody report that? Apparently in these videos he was seen waving 2 shotguns, which he named them, and then he scratched the names into each stock. And then he went on to say that he was convinced that his true persona was an alter ego he created, aka a programming alter, an animated female character named Andrew Blaze. Now, this is a female character named Andrew. So all of this obviously is programming. Most of the killings and shootings that are going on out there are programmed people. And in the link you can see a photo or a video of this young man, and it's all very sad, but as I said, it's all obviously programmed. So just keep your eyes out for these sort of things and keep yourself safe, do your protection techniques, work on your mind patterns so you don't attract these kind of things. And then also via Facebook, someone sent me this article about researchers at MIT and Harvard who are exploring a creative new approach that could help one day to make health monitoring easier. And this is called Biosensing Tattoos. The scientists have developed a special tattoo ink that contains chemicals that can sense blood sugar levels, pH, and sodium. So for example, when blood sugar goes up, the glucose sensing ink changes from blue to brown. When a person's salt levels increase, the sodium sensing ink becomes a more vibrant green under UV light. When alkaline level shifts, a pH sensor changes from purple to pink. Now, the interesting thing about this is what I'm telling you always is that they're not asking you to line up to get a health tattoo. People will line up for this because doesn't this sound like fun? Anyway, the technology is still in the very early research stage, the scientists are telling us, which means it's already been done and implemented somewhere, but just so you know. The scientist also says that it has only been tested on pig skin samples, not living, breathing animals, let alone humans, and he says that there are lots of unknowns in testing it on living skin, including questions about allergies, accuracy, and durability. For some, the idea of a decorative new tattoo that reflects your body chemistry may be appealing, but mostly the scientists say the goal is to make monitoring of health data easier, safer, and as accurate as possible. So like I said, I really wouldn't want anybody putting anything in my body, and I'm not going to go be the first to line up for it, but I can assure you that people will. Now, this also, next article is interesting to me about Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, announcing a new pride in a celebration of LGBT Pride Month, a new pride flag, I guess. The city of Philadelphia has revamped the pride flag. The 6 colors that you have seen before are still there, but they've added 2 new stripes, black and brown. And according to a statement on the website for the campaign called More Color, More Pride, the flag is meant to recognize LGBTQ people of color and recognize ways people can make the community more inclusive. So, in my opinion, it's not an inclusive thing, it's a divisive thing, because why don't we have a white band in there for white LGBT people? Why is it that we only have added black and brown? And I looked on the flag that they have, and there is red and yellow, but we don't have a white. So they're excluding the white people. So think about that one. But they're going to focus you, as we know, that this is what they do, and they're telling you that they're inclusive, but they're not. It is the white people are not represented. And this next article was also interesting to me. This is a documentary that a couple of filmmakers are asking for volunteers who will accept free money for 2 years and then be filmed while they figure out how to spend it. The amount they're talking about is $250 per week. So you can volunteer and you get this free money every week, $250. And then the only stipulation is you have to let someone film all your financial decisions for the entirety of 2 years. The film is going to be called, or the working title, Bootstraps, a Basic Income Film, which will explore the concept of Universal Basic Income, or UBI. And I've talked to you about that before, which I'll come back to when I'm done with this little bit of it. Anyway, UBI is defined by the Basic Income Earth Network, and I didn't know that even existed, but there's an organization apparently called Basic Income Earth Network, as, quote, a periodic cash payment unconditionally delivered to all on an individual basis without means, test, or work requirement. The concept is that everyone in a society, regardless of prior means, education level, career, family size, relationship status, anything at all, is given a weekly stipend to cover basic living expenses paid out in such a way that they are not limited in expending. Now, the thing that kind of got me on all of this is $250 a week for most people I don't think is basic living expenses. Most people have either rent or a house payment, they have utilities, they have a car payment, they have transportation costs, they have clothing, they have supplies, they have medical expenses. So to me, I don't think that this $250 per week is going to cover that for most people. Now, if you're extremely, say, dirt poor, poverty poor, $250 may make a difference. But for most people, I don't think that's going to make a huge difference. It's maybe pocket change for $250 a week. I mean, a movie these days is $10 to $15, maybe even more in higher populated places. So anyway, I mean, to take a family out to the movies is practically $100. So $250 is nothing. But anyway, I'm going to move on with this article because its point continues to be very interesting. They say by removing the regular financial stressors from each person's life, the filmmakers hope to answer a bigger question, which is, quote, if you had the freedom to be independent of and unbeholden to any other person or employer for a source of life-sustaining income, the freedom from fear of homelessness and hunger, what would you dare to pursue, unquote. So they don't want you to be beholden to any other person or employer, but you would then be beholden to the government because the government is the one that's handing out the checks. So remember that, and the government is the government. So then it goes on to say that they have started a Kickstarter campaign. They raised $50,000 to start the project, which they claim is enough to cover 2 people a week for 2 years, and they hope to experiment including 20 participants. Now let me see. Something else I wanted to tell you. I don't want to miss that. Well, okay, anyway, so I did tell you that Finland is giving 2,000 citizens a guaranteed income, and this is one of the first efforts to test a universal basic income. The participants will receive $587 a month, that's converted of course, money that is guaranteed regardless of income, wealth, or employment status. There is also a city in Italy called Livorno, which has a guaranteed basic income for the city's 100 poorest families. They are receiving the equivalent of $525 per month. And Switzerland last year considered giving every adult citizen a guaranteed income of $2,500 a month, but the plan was rejected in a referendum. Now this one, next little bit, kind of surprised me because apparently in the U.S., Alaska has been giving out annual cash payments to all residences since the 1980s, a dividend from the state's oil revenue. Now, I didn't know that. So I looked that up to see how much that was, and it said in 1982, each citizen got $1,000. And in 2006, each citizen got approximately $1,000. And there were variations amongst all of that, but again, let's say if you're a family of 4 and you get $4,000, that's, it's nice, it's something that you can spend obviously, but how far is that going to get you by the time you pay all your basic expenses? So anyway, just think that this universal basic income is probably going to be consistently pushed more and more until one day that may be what happens. You probably just open up an account and the little chips are going to fall in and it's going to be a cashless society, and depending on what you do or you don't do, my feeling is that everybody will be paid the same when you're at certain levels. And I also reported to you some time back about children saying how awful it was that a janitor made less than a banker and so on and so forth. So they're already starting to indoctrinate children in this universal basic income, in my opinion. Okay, moving right along. The next section, I've got 2 or 3 articles here about how they're changing history right in front of your eyes. So anyway, I want to start with the first one. German researchers find DNA from extinct humans in cave sediments, where no human remains were found, opening, quote, a new pathway for research into human evolution. A team from the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology collected samples from 7 archaeological sites in Europe and Asia, analyzing the sediment for traces of mammalian DNA. They found genetic evidence from 12 different families, including that of extinct species such as the woolly mammoth, the woolly rhinoceros, and the cave hyena. When they searched for DNA fragments specific to hominins, a precursor of modern humans, they found what they were after. 9 samples from 4 archaeological sites produced enough hominin DNA for further analysis. So, it was a surprise. The team says, we thought hominin DNA would be a very small minority in the samples, which was the case, and we were surprised by how well this worked. This article was followed up by one on an ancient Andean copper mass that could rewrite the history of metalwork in South America. This discovery of one of South America's oldest human-made metal objects challenges the accepted idea that metalworking in the region originated in Peru. So we keep reading how, oh, something's going to change history, something's going to change history. The next one, earliest evidence of first Americans could change everything if true. An ancient mastodon's remains are at the center of a heated scientific debate that could dramatically change our understanding of early human history in the Americas. The findings went against nearly everything we have been taught about early human history in North America. Shock and disbelief initially set in because we knew that our conclusions would be so controversial, said one of the team members in the journal in Nature. He goes on to say that the paper holds that early humans modified the now extinct large mammals' bones around 130,000 years ago. So 130, there's your 13 again, 1-3. That's 128,000 years before Christopher Columbus began to explore Central and South American coasts, and some 115,000 years before humans were thought to have entered North America. And here's another one. There's a 300,000-year-old skull that could rewrite the human origin story. So the article goes on to say, precisely when and where did our species emerge? Anthropologists have struggled with that question for decades, and until now, scattered clues have suggested that the answer lies somewhere in the sub-Saharan Africa around 200,000 years ago. But now we have a 300,000-year-old skull. So, new evidence outlined in 2 papers published in the journal Nature suggests that the first Homo sapiens showed up more than 100,000 years earlier than we thought in a place that experts did not expect. The team say the ancient bones came from people who lived roughly 300,000 to 350,000 years ago. These dates were a big wow. So, this is just a small sample from this week of things that are going to change and rewrite human history. So right before your eyes, history is changing, and they're telling you this. So, you know, by the time we've got another decade or two on us and the next generation of children go through school, who knows what they're going to be teaching them that's going to be totally different than what you were taught. That's why it's important that you read Frequency so you know what's going on instead of listening to all of this outside information. It's something to look at and to think about, but that doesn't make it true. And this was another story which I had actually found back in March, but because I've been having so much news for you lately, I kind of held on to that story, but I wanted to bring this to your attention as well, because in Idaho, a woman crashed into a deer on a night in March and claims that the animal was chased in front of her car by a Sasquatch. And this was again in regular news. The woman says she was driving along US 95 near Potlatch, which I've been to, and saw a shaggy 7 to 8 foot tall creature running after the deer on the right side of the road. This is according to the Moscow Pullman Daily News report. The woman told police that after speeding by, she took a look in her rearview mirror, and next thing she knew, the deer ran into the road and slammed into her vehicle. So, Sasquatch story. And my last story for you, I've been talking to you about unicorns. All of a sudden, unicorns are everywhere. And a person that I got this specific article from titled it, Unicorn Fever is Spreading. And now there's even chatter about mermaids and dragons. And that's interesting because in my Facebook page, I didn't pay too much attention to it, but I did notice there's like a mermaid cafe somewhere where everything is like shaped like a mermaid or supposed mermaid colors. And then I just watched something, I just posted that about, I can't remember where it's located, but it's Philippine food, but you can look at it on my Facebook page, and they have dragon fruit. And then there also was a dragon kite that was in the sky. So we have unicorns coming into vogue, we have mermaids, and we have dragons. Very magical, very mystical, and very mythical. So this particular article then went on to tell you how to make homemade skinny unicorn donuts, right? And then I've also seen unicorn noodles, unicorn sushi, unicorn oatmeal, unicorn pretzels, unicorn yogurt bark, unicorn sprinkles, homemade unicorn frappuccino, unicorn popsicles, and magical unicorn lattes. And so I'm wondering if next we're not going to have unicorn cars, because all of a sudden all these colors are very fantastical. So very interesting, I thought. So that's my news, a little bit of here and a little bit of there after my trip. I'm back home and getting readjusted. I want to remind you that we're about half sold out, maybe a little bit more for the private day on Long Island, June 8th. Please check the website if you want to attend that particular event. September Spectacular is also posted. If you need a payment plan, now's the time to start it. And October, of course, is the bus trip to El Paso, Texas, and all around through New Mexico and back to El Paso, Texas. I want you to remember decoding your life. This is basic universal law. It will keep you safe. This month on my blog, we're talking about conscious source communication. So if you're interested in consciously communicating with your source, you want to join the site, you want to do some reading and decoding your life, and then this book, 1000 Daily Affirmations for Self-Change, one of our most popular ones. That's why I haven't been telling you about it, but I guess they're all popular, they all sell. But anyway, 1099 Daily Affirmations for Self-Change. There's one on connection, one on focus, one on living as an example, your mental prison, releasing the positive, support system. You just pick it up, open it up, unification, not unicorn, unification. You just pick it up anywhere and you have, oh, here's one on mother. I'm sure you don't have any mother issues, right? Mind control, mental prison, I said, inner resources, identifying frequencies, establishing new cycles, depression, creating the present, compassion, collective mind pattern, cleansing, childhood issues, blocking triggers, balance, avoidance, adversity, abundance, abandonment. So you name it, you've got an issue, you open up this book and it will give you some information that can help you. I can fit both of these in one envelope. So it's a great little package, a present to yourself, take it to the beach for your summer reading, or if you're in the other part of the world, something great to sit by a warm fire and sip on a cup of tea. So with that said, I want to thank you for joining me, Janet Diane Moria Swerdlow, expansions.com.